Evening, everyone. Please be seated. Welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Training Certification training here. Welcome back to those of you who are joining us yet once again online and joining us locally. We're going to continue in this exciting class here. We're in the acceptance unit, and we're going to be picking up where William left off last class on chapter 2. I just want to go back here. 3, not 2. 3, which is positive communication leads to healthy interaction. Of course, both William and Chris spoke about the importance of there being healthy communication within a family, within relationships, whether they're personal or professional, because we're able to relate to one another based on how we interact and how we communicate with one another. We think about that definition of interaction, and part of it is influence, right? How we work with and influence other people. Okay, and so as we learned from the very beginning here in the character unit, influences are very, very powerful. They have the potential, the ability to change the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you act. And of course, we, as students of the Peaceful Solution, need to be very mindful of the influences that we allow to enter into our minds. Now, as we've said many, many times before, I know I've said it many, many times before, we can't govern every aspect of every influence that is around us, from media to billboards to things people say and do. Sometimes you're at a stoplight and somebody will drive up with their windows down and they'll have some music blaring on their radio, or that'll take you back 30 years. You can't govern every aspect, but we do have the ability to govern what we choose to focus on and what we choose to ignore. And of course, all these things play a part in the building and the development of our character. As we remember, I like to keep going back and reminding myself, really it's a reminder to myself in chapter 1 of the factors that help to develop or form a character. And one of those things are the influences and our environment. And genetics, they also play a role too. But we're going to talk about positive communication and how it leads to healthy interactions. And we're going to be actually picking up where William left off on page 53. Page 53. But before we go to that page, I would like for us to all turn back to the lesson plan, which he did read. We'll just go back and refresh what he read, LP or lesson plan 3, page E. And we're looking at procedure 7 there. It says, have students turn to the section building relationships, okay? Because just keep in mind, how all of these things are building blocks, right? And they cover every aspect of life for the child. And it's not just the child, we're training to be teachers, but that doesn't specifically mean you're only going to be teaching children, those who are age 5 to, 19 or 20, 24 or whatever. Anyone is a child in regards to their relationship to their teacher, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, but it could be adults as well, all right? And most of the older people, they've already gone through the process of building relationships. A lot of the young people have, to some degree, gone to the process of building relationships. But not always are those relationships healthy, right? Not always are those relationships built on morality, built on or formed based on the connection of positive characters. What's initially looked at is the personality, because that's what society teaches for everybody to look at. Look at their personality. Look at what's on the outside. Advertisements base their product, the sale of their product, on the appeal, how it appeals to the eye of the consumer. They'll change the way a bottle is designed, or change the way these two colors go together. And essentially that's personality. That's how it's presented from the outside, right? But sometimes they could be selling something that's very dangerous to a person, but they not take that into consideration because they're in awe based on the beauty of this appealing product. Well, it's the same thing with people. You know, people can be in awe or enamored, as one of the words are, with other people based merely on the way that they present themselves. And you see that a lot with the you know, music and Hollywood and so forth. You know, you see people swooning over certain Hollywood stars, and it's like, you know, they don't know their personal lives. They don't know how their characters are. They don't know how they are when they're off stage, because when pretty much when they're on stage, they're putting on a show. And that's what they're doing. They're putting on the show. Well, most of us, generally speaking, we put on a show when we go out and we interact with others in society. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing, because you don't go out, you know, to work and, you know, spill all your beans to everybody about how your personal, your home life is. You know, we need relationships, right? We are interdependent. Okay, that's a word that we're going to hear as we move forward in the peaceful solution. Interdependent. We depend on one another in order to function in society, in our lives. You know, I was able to come up here to class this evening to teach and to put on my clothes and to drive my vehicle up here, not because it was something that I made. You know, I didn't make this shirt and this tie. I didn't make the vehicle that I drove up here in, but I depended on other people to do their jobs, which enabled me to carry out certain things in life. And we'll cover that a lot later. But in regards to relationalized statement, but there are many who go through high school and look at it as a game. So it says, explain to students that healthy interactions are based on positive communication and respect. Healthy interactions, when nurtured, and this, you know, nurtured is just basically taken care of and built on, kind of like when you get a plant and you nurture that plant from a very, you know, small little sapling, or what's sapling's a tree, but, you know, even a tree from a very small little sapling until it gets a little bit bigger and it gets, you know, healthy enough in its pot and its root system is strong enough till you can plant it in the ground, and then you still have to take care of it. So it's basically taking care of these things. And this is what we have to do with our relationships as well. But when they're nurtured, notice here they can lead to strong, positive, moral relationships. And moral being the key word with what we're covering with and picking up where William left off last class on page 53 in regards to the rules. Morals always relate to, it's a word that simply means rules. You know, the way we keep the rules, and there's moral lines, moral principles, and so forth, and they all govern how we interact with each other. Have students turn to page 55 in their handbooks, and we'll do that here next as we get through here, page 53. So let's go back to 53, and we'll come back to procedure 7 here after we get through this point. So we're here at the under rules. We'll just go back a little bit. William covered the second paragraph. We'll just pick up and then get into the third one there, in case there's someone who didn't catch class last time. I really do encourage everybody, if you do occur to miss a class, please, you know, go back and rewatch it. You can go back as far as the very first class that we had in the character unit and the introduction to this program. You know, it's never going to be for a loss. You know, you're always going to catch new things or more information or different perspectives on something that you might have already read 10 or 15 times in this book. You know, going back and rereading these things or listening to these things, it just strengthens them in our minds, makes them come more to the forefront of our mind. But we're under building relationships. And at the very top there, I want to remind everybody, and this is something that's very important as teachers to remind our students. You know, we ask this question many times when we go into schools and we teach about respect, and we've taught many workshops and classes on respect and responding to disrespect, bullying, and so forth. And this is a quote that we use a lot in teaching the students, and it is, don't give respect to get respect. Because in many times you'll see posters along the walls, you know, of the schools saying respect is something that must be earned. You know, you have to give it to get it. Okay? And so that sets into the minds of the student that, well, you know, if this person doesn't respect me, then I have no need to respect that other person, because they haven't gotten my respect or they haven't given me respect, so they're sure not going to get mine, right? And it sends a mixed signal in the mind of the student because these are posters based on supposedly character development. They are developing a character, but it's not the character that we want in society. We want a positive one, and we want to send clear messages to our students that will yield the outcome that we as teachers want to see for them. But also, for the most part, I don't think any of the students in society today desire to see negative outcomes for themselves, right? They don't desire, in a lot of cases, to see negative outcomes for their peers. They just don't know what to do to bring about the positive, okay? And that's why education is so important. But don't give respect to get it, to get respect. Give respect notice because it's the right thing to do. You can also say, give respect because it's the moral thing to do. Why? Because in giving respect, you're not bringing harm to yourself, others, or the environment, okay? And that was covered last class about how we are able to differentiate between what's right and what's wrong, okay? We could just always go back to that simple, concept of, does this bring harm to myself, others, or the environment? Does this damage property? Will it cause embarrassment to myself or my parents and so forth? Because some things that we do negative can bring shame or dishonor. I guess shame or dishonor should be the word better used, because you can do right things and be embarrassed, right? Just because it might be embarrassing doesn't mean it's wrong, but something that you do that's right will never bring shame. Something that you do that's moral will never bring dishonor to you or somebody else, okay? So you can always use that as your gauge in deciding if you need to make a decision immediately. Go back to those points and make a decision based off of that. If you can, sometimes it's better to just wait. Ask, get guidance from a trusted parent or teacher or counselor or so forth, and then go back to make that decision. Not everything has to be made instantly. All right, so just reading that relationship there at the under building relationships there, just that first sentence there, first two sentences, it says, a relationship is built when mutual interaction connects two or more people as belonging or working together. Although there are many types of relationships, they all result from communication and interaction. So let's look down here to under rules, and we'll see that first sentence there. Whether you are aware of it or not, all relationships, both professional and personal, have rules or guidelines that govern behavior and interaction. And a lot of times people don't take into consideration that just because you work around someone, or you are around someone, or you live with someone, it doesn't mean that you don't have to follow the rules in regards to your interaction, your behavior with that person. And as William covered last class, there have been many people who have suffered the very expensive consequence of breaking those rules that society sets for proper and healthy interactions in regards to harassment in the workplace. It could be sexual harassment, it could be verbal harassment. Sometimes you'll even see in the news occasionally where there'll be harassment lawsuits brought against a city or a police department because a particular person or of an ethnicity or culture was pulled over multiple times in a particular city. I just saw in the news not that long ago a particular city, I believe it's in Iowa, and one particular officer had continuously been racially profiling certain people, and the city had several lawsuits brought against that officer by different groups of people of the same ethnicity, color, right? Not related, and so harassment lawsuits were brought. So it's not only sexual, but there's different types of harassment. Sexual seems to be the biggest part that we see taking place in society. A lot of you have probably heard of the Me Too movement that has kind of been, I don't know, I guess possibly taking the nation by storm, so to speak, where a lot of people are speaking out, a lot of women are speaking out against men, and a lot of these men are in very prominent, high positions, crossing the boundaries of those rules that are set to ensure healthy relationships. Okay, now whether all of these are true or some of these are just a a campaign to get money, either way, if these rules were being upheld, there would be no cause for it at all, right? Because a person's reputation will stand for itself. Okay? But it says here, whether you are aware of it or not, all relationships, both professional and personal, have rules or guidelines that govern behavior and interaction. Many workplaces and most schools have a code of conduct that states that there must be verbal and physical respect for others at all times. All times. Physical and verbal abuse, as well as sexual language. Notice this is a form of breaking these rules. Language and behavior, both those two, are inappropriate and prohibited. And a lot of schools nowadays, I've been out of school for quite a while now, but I've seen in the schools that we've been to, I don't know, it might be even digital now, I'm not really sure, or just on the school's website, but they used to have a little handbook that gave the students the code of conduct. It gave the students what was expected of them in regards to their behavior between them and their peers, between them and their teachers, and between them and the school's property. Okay? And they were expected to go through it and read it and uphold all those rules. Otherwise, the consequences, which were usually listed in the book, would be brought towards them, or they would receive that as a result of breaking those rules. So, when we see the word rules, we should look at it as something not, rules, more rules again. We got more, everything, there's rules for everything. Every time I turn around, there's rules. There's rules on the road. I can't do this at work. I can't do this at home. When I'm driving my car, I got to follow rules. I can't even do certain things off-road. I can't do this at night on my own property. There's rules. But rules, what we teach the young children in the elementary series, in the building blocks, the foundation, the pillar of what we're learning here, the rules there are meant to keep us safe. They're meant to be a benefit to us. So really, we have to kind of retrain our mind into not looking at rules as a negative thing, but looking at rules as something that's positive, looking at rules as something that's beneficial, that's helpful, that'll keep me and those who I interact with safe, right? And so that just comes from, retraining our minds, because a lot of times society puts out to the world through media, through entertainment, through the internet, through books, right? Even in advertisement, rules are meant to be broken, right? Rules are burdensome and so forth. But those rules are there to keep us safe. Just keep that in mind in regards to the peaceful solution. Physical and verbal abuse, as well as sexual language and behavior, are inappropriate and prohibited. Relationships such as those between teachers and students or doctor and patient are, so here we have the distinguishing between the two type of relationships that we're talking about here. They're professional, and the rules governing their behavior are meant to keep people from being abused and mistreated. And there was a case not that long ago where they brought charges against a coach, a coach of a gymnast. He was a gymnastic coach. And he was doing some things that broke certain rules. And he was pretty well known. He was pretty well respected. Parents sent their children to them to learn gymnastics, not gymnasiums. They sent them to learn gymnastics because he had several medals and trophies under his belt, in training the young women and the young men, only to have that trust broken, right? Very quickly. And overnight, his world was flipped upside down because certain rules were not kept, okay? And like Chris covered, how many times does it take, for a person to break the rules in regards to disrespecting someone or even stealing from someone for you to be considered a thief? Just one time. Just one time. When you breaking that rule, you start yourself down that path of being that thief or that abuser or whatever the case might be. So it's best, as we've learned about the peaceful solution, I believe chapter 2 or 3 there, it falls into 2 categories, this program, prevention and intervention. Prevention, they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Well, it's very true. It's better to not get ourselves engaged in certain immoral behaviors than to try to lawyer up later, to get out of it. So let's look at the third sentence there, paragraph there on page 53, the third paragraph, under rules, rules, rules. It says, when the rules that govern personal relationships are compromised, the result is also abuse that could range from verbal to physical and sexual. All right? Sexual behavior between family members, for example, is not only immoral, but also devastating. It violates the bond of trust that must exist between family members of the same family, okay? And there has to be that bond of trust, and normally that trust is kind of developed, in a family as a child grows up in the family. The child automatically starts to develop that bond of trust with their mother or their father, their guardian, just over a period of time. They've learned that they can rely on them to provide them food, clothing, and shelter. They've learned that they can run to them when they are in need of something, or possibly when they've hurt themselves. They've learned that they can rely on them to protect them from things in their environment that can cause them harm. So over a period of time, they build that trust for them. All right, and sometimes that trust is very quickly broken when people who themselves have not been taught the peaceful solution make decisions. I'm just looking for my notes here. That's what I'm looking for. There we go. Make decisions that bring harm to their children or those in their care. Okay? And remember, it only takes one time, and that trust can be broken for a very long time, or in some cases, with some people, forever. Let's see here. Because parents or guardians are responsible for your safety and well-being, their interactions with you must be appropriate at all times. Okay, and remember, we're teaching this to the children. We're teaching this to our students, right? And we're giving them information to help them to guard themselves, right? To help them to be mindful of how things within their environment should be. Okay, as we covered about character, the effects of character within the family, there are healthy and there are dysfunctional families. Most families fall somewhere in between, is what we'll find. But it's important for us as teachers, again, as we've mentioned before, we don't need to go and probe into our students' lives. We don't need to get all the nitty-gritty, so to speak. We're there to provide them with information so that they can make a decision. It might be through that information that they were provided, they make the decision to go and speak to a counselor, okay? Because now they realize that the things that they might be experiencing at home, or the things that they might be experiencing at school, or the things that they might be experiencing anywhere else is not normal and is not moral, okay? But sometimes it takes someone to guide them in that, to give them that bit of information for them to recognize the difference between what's right and wrong, because a lot of times we take for granted that everybody knows the difference between what's right and wrong. The only way you can know the difference between what's right and wrong is to be taught it, right? And most of us here, we learn the rules, the rules of what's right and wrong that govern the roadways because we were trained. A lot of us, some of us might not have went to a when I was in high school, we had to, in order to get I guess if you were under 18, in order to get a driver's permit, learner's permit, you had to take a course. You had to take a driver's ed course, is what it was called, driver's education course, so that you could learn the fundamentals of the roads. And I can tell you, those first few weeks of taking that course was not behind the wheel. It was sitting in the classroom and learning the rules that govern the road. Okay. And then we got to get out on the road and practice. And of course, that's what we all look forward to. Everybody knew what that pedal on the right was for, but not many people paid attention to the one on the left, which was just as important. All right. So let's see here. Let me read that sentence again. Oh no, we read that. Okay. So to reach their full potential, remember, potential is having or showing the capacity to become or develop into something in the future. Having or showing the capacity to become or to develop into something in the future. And our students, we're wanting them to become strong, positive, moral leaders, right? And they have the potential. Every single one of them has the potential. Even the one that might be considered the worst of the worst in your classroom has the potential to, and the capacity, which is the capacity to become or develop into something in the future. You know, we have to look at the minds of our students not as something that, and sometimes it might seem like it's a obstacle to get through, but you know, I kind of like to compare it to you know, like a person who makes pottery, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen the potter's wheel, and you know, we had art classes in school, and you know, you'd have to take this big lump of clay, and it was kind of dry, you know, and it was just this clumpy mess that you stuck on that potter's wheel, and they had to get the wheel going, not the water wheel, but the wheel going, and then they added water, and then they used their fingers to mold that lump of clay into something that was really nice. A cup, a bowl, a vase, you know, whatever it was, a flower pot, you know, but the teacher had to have the knowledge on how to take that lumpy, you know, unformed piece of clay, see what it had the potential to become, and then put forth the work and the effort to continue to shape and mold it until it reached its full potential. And that's what we have to do as teachers, right? We should never look at any student in our class and say that they can't be helped, right? Because that really is saying that this program that we're learning here can't do what it says it's going to do. You know, as the author has said many times before, the only way this program will not work is if you refuse to use it, right? So our job is to teach and to guide and give inspiration and motivation where it needs be. The student's job is to take it, to study it, and to apply it in their lives. And it's guaranteed to work. So to reach their full potential, all family members, now notice here, all family members within a family, okay, because we're talking about these personal relationships. Professional relationships, one thing, personal relationships, another here in the family. All family members must have a safe and secure environment in which to grow. Now, always keep that in mind when we talk about that environment, because that environment plays a very integral role in the shaping and forming of our character. Okay, we have to have a healthy environment. It's difficult, not impossible, but it's very difficult when a person is taught the principles in the peaceful solution, and then they have to go home at the end of the day to a dysfunctional, unhealthy environment. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't take that knowledge and grow and put it to work in that environment. It just means they're going to have to put a little more effort in it. They're going to get the opportunity to use their lessons right away when they go home, okay? But it makes it a lot easier, and the growth is very fast when the environment is also supportive as well. And this is why it's important that, you know, in some cases, you know, when we are training the children, that we get the parents involved where we can. You know, a lot of times parents are leading such a busy life, they just want to dump their children off and you fix them. You deal with it, right? I don't have time for this. I got to take this phone call, all right? But when we can get the parents involved with the child's education process, you know, getting them involved in the education process too, them learning themselves, then you have this point here when all members have this safe and secure environment in which to grow. Because parents, you know, just because they have the children doesn't mean that they're not able to still grow and build their character, right? They're still growing and learning as parents. I've been a parent for not as long as a lot of my peers, for only about 14 years, but I'm constantly learning, because why? I haven't been a parent for 15 years. It's going to be different when the 15th year and the 16th year and the 20th year comes, right? And so they learn just as well as their children. This can only be achieved here, notice, when everyone interacts in a moral way and there is mutual concern or care and concern. Now, that key word there, mutual, which means both people are agreeing to uphold the rules, right? Mutual, and in regards care and concern. Care and concern, missing one word there, consideration, essentially what you have is respect. Consideration, care, and concern. So when there is mutual respect in a family, then you can have this environment, this safe and secure environment, which every member of the family can grow. And that's something that we have to let the children know, or the students know, that, hey, you might be the only one in your family right now who are learning this information. But don't be discouraged, right? By your positive example, you can teach your mother or your father or your brother or your sister, right? How they too can benefit from what you're learning, okay? And of course they can, in learning this as well, improve the entire environment of the family. I've heard where, some of even Williams students who have come to some of the classes in the past, the parents were so impressed by the change in behavior of their child that they said they had to get to that class to see what that child was learning, because they could not believe the change in behavior and attitude and willingness to be obedient and responsible of that child, that they had been struggling for years to get the child to fall in line, and they weren't successful. And just a few weeks of several classes, they already started to see a change in the behavior, right? And so, it's the potential of this peaceful solution character education is far and vast. It covers every aspect of life. So this can only be achieved when everyone interacts in a moral way and there is mutual care and concern. But let's read that bottom sentence there. It says, you also have an obligation. So this is speaking here. So we set the stage there in that paragraph for what the student needs to look out for. Okay, this is the environment that will help you develop and build a healthy, strong relationship with your family members. Okay, and these are the things that you should look out for, things that we're showing will help to accomplish this goal. Now, you as the student, right, you also have an obligation to follow the rules when interacting with others. It's not just that others have to follow the rules when interacting with you. Now, you as a student have to do the same. This takes us back to the word mutual, right? When both people agree to show this care and concern towards one another. Needless to say, you do not have the right, speaking to the student, to physically, verbally, or sexually abuse anyone for any reason, right? Even if something like that has taken place in the student's life, that has been something that's been perpetuated against them or perpetrated against them, right? That does not give them the right to do it to somebody else because, well, this was done to me, so I did it to someone else. Sadly, as we'll get to a little bit later, studies show that many who were abused, many who were bullied, many who were shown various forms of disrespect in their early life often become abusers themselves later on in life, right? But it is a cycle that can be stopped with education. And of course, teaching them the value to value themselves. A lot of times in the process of this abuse that takes place within a family, and it doesn't necessarily always mean sexual abuse, it could be any type of abuse that we've covered here, there is a process of devaluing the person, getting them to think less of themselves, getting them to depend on the other person for appreciation and acceptance, okay? And this is where the peaceful solution comes into place, because what we teach is that you have to see the value in yourself. You have value. You are important, right? And seeing the value in themselves will aid them in also seeing the value in other people. Because think about it, when a person is abused and they are devalued, the abuser devalues them, so now they don't see that they are worth and they're important, they have value. When they don't see that in themselves, then it becomes easier for them to not have value or see value in other people. So they continue a cycle, what they say, a vicious cycle of that same type of abuse. But when that intervention comes in with the peaceful solution, and they start learning that, hey, just because this occurred to you doesn't mean that you're not important, doesn't mean that your life doesn't have value. You can actually, turn this around right now, okay, and start doing things in your life that put you on a positive path, a road less traveled. Then you can actually break that cycle, and then they don't become abusers, right? But they actually become teachers of peace. I just wanted to see where we're at. Okay. Because in regards to this abuse, William covered a little bit last class here on some of the long-term effects of childhood sexual abuse. And this was something that was actually from a counseling website that kind of trains counselors on what to look for, telltale signs on what to look for in children who are abused. And it says, child sexual abuse is a subject, they abbreviate it CSA, is a subject that has received much attention in recent years. 28 to 33% of women and 12 to 18% of men were victims of childhood or adolescent sexual abuse. Sexual abuse that does not include touch and other types of abuse are reported less often, which means this number of individuals who have been sexually abused and in their childhood may actually be greater, because a lot of these things go underreported because a lot of victims don't report these crimes. Now, sexual abuse is defined as abuse which occurs whenever one person dominates and exploits another by means of sexual activity or suggestion. It also means any sexual act, overt or covert, between a child and an adult, or older child, where the younger child's participant is obtained through seduction. And it's interesting because that word seduction there, it's used a lot. You see a lot of it in the news and reports and dealing with crime and so forth. It means to persuade or cause someone to do something that they would not usually consider doing by being very attractive and difficult to refuse from the point of view of the seducer. To persuade or trick someone into doing something by making it very attractive. And this does not necessarily mean attractive like, ooh, that guy or that girl is attractive. It could be anything. A lot of people take advantage of young people by offering them things, right? Treats or they buy them things, clothes and games and video games and things of that nature. And that's very appealing to them. So it's done by seduction or coercion, and that word coercion means to persuade someone forcefully. To coerce someone means to persuade them forcefully to do something that he or she may not want to do. Okay, and this is all tied into this form of abuse here. Irrespective of how childhood sexual abuse is defined, it generally has significant negative and pervasive. That word pervasive means existing in or spreading through every part of something. In the case of society, many places, many people have wrought havoc on society because of the things that they experienced when they were a child. And that ties us back into that negative ripple effect that we covered in the first unit of the character unit. Significant negative and pervasive psychological impact on his victims. And then, let's see here, just got a little time there. from victimsofcrime.org here, it says the prevalence of child sexual abuse is difficult to determine because it is not often reported. Experts agree that the incidence is far greater than what is reported to authorities. A child who is a victim of prolonged abuse usually develops low self-esteem. Now, these are some of the things that William was talking about last class, is some of the consequences that affect a person who is abused in that way, in any way, form of abuse. They develop low self-esteem, a feeling of worthlessness, and an abnormal or distorted view of sex. The child may become withdrawn and mistrustful of adults and can become suicidal. All right? And just remember, our environment, our influence and experiences, they're all part of the factors that help to shape our characters. And a lot of people have to deal with these things, or had to deal with these things in their environment. And you might be dealing with a student who that might have taken place years ago, but they have not dealt with the impact, the mental impact, the psychological impact that had on their life. And I say that to say, as teachers, we can't be so quick to judge a person's behavior just on sight alone. We have to take into consideration that there might have been many things that have taken place in their environment growing up that has caused them to have a lack of trust for adults, or caused them to lash out at a particular trigger. Okay, it's not our job to judge them based on one or two behaviors. It's our job to provide them with the information, guide and encourage them to make better choices. Once our characters are formed, that character governs the way we think, feel, and act. Of course, it dictates our decision-making process. And, of course, our character is also kind of like the lens through which we see everything in our environment, right? It's like if a person is always pessimistic, everything in their environment takes on a pessimistic view, right? It could be the most beautiful weather, but it's not enough sunshine, or they don't like the way that cloud looks. Too much grass. I can't stand the smell of grass. If somebody just cut grass, it smells like fresh cut grass. I don't like that smell, right? If somebody's optimistic, well, things, they're seen much more in an optimistic view. Same way with positive and negative character. If we have a positive character, we'll always be looking for an opportunity to demonstrate that, to teach it to somebody, or to practice what we have learned that has helped us to develop a positive character. Page 53 there, that last sentence there, it says, you must demonstrate, still speaking to the student, you must demonstrate respect to others that you would want them to demonstrate to you. As was said last class, do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Do not take people for granted. For example, we sometimes assume that people who know well, such as parents, siblings, and peers, will not mind. I'm sorry, let me read that. I missed a word. For example, we sometimes assume that people we know well, such as parents, siblings, and peers, will not mind if we use or borrow their belongings without asking. Okay, this ties into what we'll be covering in another 2 units in regards to familiarity breeding disrespect, right? Because we can't make the assumption that just because we know that person, oh, that's my brother's, oh, that's my mother's, that's my father's, right? Oh, that's my best friend's. He won't mind if I take his car for a spin at 12 o'clock in the morning without asking him, right? They won't mind if I come in their house because I know where the key is, hidden under the rock by their stairs. No, that's not true. We can't assume that just because we know someone that we can just trespass. We could take, touch, or borrow something without asking. And that's, one of the pillars that we teach at the very onset of this information, the young children, asking, the importance of asking. Asking is very important. Because if we can ask, then we are showing and demonstrating respect for the owner by getting permission to use their belongings. Okay? And of course, that eliminates a lot of problems that we see in society. Let's see here. Remember, unless someone gives you permission, You do not have the right to touch or use his or her possession. So, as previously mentioned, always ask permission before touching and then wait for an answer, right? Wait for an answer. A lot of times, young people will ask for permission. They won't really ask for permission. They'll kind of phrase it in a statement question. You know, Dad, is okay. I'm gonna go outside. Right? Is it okay? Is the question. I'm going to go outside. Is the statement. I'm just letting you know, and I'm asking you if it's okay that you know that I'm getting ready to do this, that I'm going to do without asking you. Right? Now we've got to teach them to ask and then wait. Right? Wait for the answer. Okay? Because there might be a reason that the mother or the father or the parent or the teacher don't want the child to go outside or don't want the child to use a particular item. For whatever the reason might be. It might be something's broken and is dangerous to use. There might have been a warning come out, lightning or something like that, or something's going on. It might be a rabid dog running outside loose. Okay, a lot of times children go missing, not because they're kidnapped, but they go outside and they play. They don't let the parent know. They fall and they hurt themselves. Right? It's just a simple thing. Maybe they climb a tree or they twist their ankle and they step in a big hole or something like that. Well, the parent doesn't even know where they are, right? And it takes a while for someone to actually find them because they didn't know they were gone, so they're not looking for them, right? Until they realize that they've been calling them for 10 minutes and they're not coming. So this is also what's important. It's important as teachers to express this in a way to get the child to understand the importance of it, because children don't always see the importance of asking, right? They make a lot of decisions based on the emotions. It's like when the ice cream truck comes down the street, they want to just dart out the door and go right to the ice cream truck, right? Especially on these hot summer days, they don't stop and think, Mom, Dad, can I go outside and buy some ice cream? Okay, someone's got to go with you. You can't just go by yourself, right? Don't run across the street because cars come across the street. You could get hit by a car, right? Do you have money to buy ice cream? You got to have money to buy ice cream as well. So, there are things that young people don't take into consideration because a lot of times they're making impulsive decisions based on emotions, and we've got to teach them how to start thinking more logically. So, as previously mentioned, always ask before touching, and then wait for an answer. And then here, this is also a key, we can't leave this out as well, accept their answer to avoid conflict and hurt feelings. All right? So ask, wait for an answer, and then accept the answer. It's a 3-step process. Remember what we're talking about here. We're talking about communication. We're talking about building healthy relationships. All right? If you don't ask to borrow or use someone's belongings, and you consistently demonstrate that you're not willing to show respect to that person by getting permission to use their belongings, what type of relationship do you think you're going to be building with them? A very unhealthy, distrustful, conflict-ridden relationship, okay? And so it's important that they understand those 3 points. Ask, answer, accept, okay? Ask, answer, accept. You can I like to put things in easy to remember formats so that when we're teaching or I have to think about something, what are the 3 A's? Ask, wait for an answer, accept the answer. Okay, I got it. So I've asked, now I have to wait for an answer. Because sometimes that answer might not come immediately. Children sometimes get very impatient if their parent, their guardian, or their teacher doesn't give them an answer immediately. Sometimes the parent might need to think about it for a while. They might need to investigate something before they give them an answer. You want to go outside? Well, let me go check and see if you cleaned your room first. Did you do your chores? Did you follow instructions at school? They might want to find out a few things before they give them that reward, okay? And then it's very important to accept the answer, because when people don't accept the owner's answer or the authority's answer, whether it's a parent or the owner in regards to the right, everybody has rights to their belongings, even if it's a sibling, even if it's your younger sibling, their younger sibling, right? They can't go and think, well, I'm the older sibling, I can go ahead and take whatever I want. You have to do whatever I say you do. I'm going to give you a noogie. People used to get them back in the day in the head there. you still have to show respect to that younger sibling. And in doing so, you'll actually gain a greater degree of respect for your younger sibling because they're going to realize that, hey, you could have taken advantage of me just by your age or, expressing your dominance through your age. But no, you actually showed me respect. And they'll remember that later in their older years that their older brother or sister actually asked permission to use their belongings before even a parent. Sometimes you need to ask your child, is it all right if I use this? Okay, some things are, we have to instill that within their minds and show them that importance. So let's look at the next paragraph there. Be respectful towards adults who have authority to guide and teach you. Now, again, remember, we showed what we're doing in regards to building relationships. Then we showed the rules on page 53 on what govern healthy relationships within the family. In other words, what the student should be looking for. Now we're looking at what is the responsibility or the requirement of the student themselves, the person who we're sitting there teaching. We're talking to them. These are the things that they need to be mindful of doing. Be respectful towards adults who have authority to guide and teach you, such as your parents, other family members, or teachers. This means following directions the first time given. And that's something we're going to learn when we get into the self-control unit after this unit, that if a person, a parent, a teacher has to consistently remind you to do things, remind you to follow instructions, remind you to take out the trash, to do your chores, to be kind to your siblings, you're not practicing self-control, right? They're having to exercise it for you, okay? So it's important that we as individuals follow directions the first time given. You know what else that also eliminates when you follow directions the first time given? That eliminates the opportunity to hear these two words coming from your mouth to your parent or teacher, I forgot. Those are the famous words. Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you follow my instructions? I forgot. Well, if you would have done it immediately, the first time given, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to forget it. Okay? And so these are things that we have to now. It might seem like we're nagging. Of course we're not nagging, but we're trying to instill within them the importance of these principles so that it becomes easier for them to accept these concepts later on in life. Let's finish up this paragraph here. It says, being humble, so this means following directions the first time given, being humble when corrected, very important, cover that a little bit more later, and doing all tasks to the best of your ability. Here is what it boils down to. Regardless of who it involves, keep all relationships, whether personal or professional, appropriate and respectful. And this is the requirement both from the student and also putting into the student's mind what they should be considering and looking for in interactions that are directed towards them from other people. Okay, and in this way they will develop healthy, strong, and positive, lasting relationships that will last a long time and won't bring harm to themselves, others, or the environment. So we're going to stop here on page 54, and we'll pick up next class at just what is a moral positive relationship. And next class will be on the 29th, Sunday the 29th at 5:30 p.m. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you then.